actively been trying to find trades, and a lot of that seems like it got put on hold as soon as Kyrie Irving made his announcement. And all signs kind of pointed to the Lakers landing Kyrie. Unfortunately, they didn't, and the Dallas Mavericks ended up acquiring Kyrie Irving. So now the Lakers have to repivot. But the good thing is that they were having pre-conversations before the Kyrie thing. It was just kind of like this quick deterrent, and now they're back on track to try to find some type of trades to kind of upgrade this team. The Lakers desperately need it. Kyrie Irving would have been fantastic, but it didn't work out. That doesn't mean you don't do anything. That doesn't mean you just stand pat. It means you go and you find the next best deal and you try to upgrade your team. The West just seems extremely wide open, and it feels like there's a real opportunity for the Lakers with the right pieces to get into the playoffs. And then once in the playoffs, you trust your stars and LeBron James and Anthony Davis to lead your team to a potential championship. Very likely Russell Westbrook is going to be traded. Just numerous reports on just the whole scenario, right? Like multiple teams, the Hornets, the Raptors, the Utah Jazz are all teams that have been referenced and mentioned as a potential destination for Russell Westbrook. Now, because I still get this comment regularly, these teams don't want Russell Westbrook, the player. They want his contract, the Lakers' assets, and to unload salary or just move guys because they're expiring free agents or whatever the case may be. So that's something of clarification. But because Kyrie was kind of plan A for a brief moment, we now have information about what plan B is, and it's actually two plans. The first one is the Utah Jazz. So we have gotten numerous reports on the Utah Jazz that the Lakers and the Jazz are working on a potential deal. There were even talks about maybe even the 3-team deal that would have landed Kyrie. That didn't happen, so now the Lakers can look to do maybe a direct deal. And based on all the reports, it looks like it's going to be Jared Vanderbilt, Malik Beasley, and then Mike Conley are the three guys that the Lakers would get in return for a Russell Westbrook trade, and then draft compensation would be put out. There's a lot of questions of, can this get done? Are the Lakers going to give up both first? Are the Utah Jazz going to compromise? What is going to end up happening in that regard? Now, Utah, I think, would be a great package. You could get Beasley, a 3-and-D style shooting guard, still very young. He's like 24, 25 years old. Mike Conley is a very good, savvy vet, 3-and-D style. He would be a great complement next to LeBron James. He already plays a lot of off the ball, but he also has one of the best assist to turnover ratios in history, right? He's just absolutely incredible when it comes to that, and he's having a great season in general. And then, of course, Jared Vanderbilt would be just that hustle, do everything type guy. A guy that can guard multiple positions, can play both forward spots. Shooting wise, he isn't a great shooter, but his defense and his tenacity and his hustle makes up more than enough, right? People already love Winning Gabriel, for example. Winning Gabriel is not really a shooter. He's knocked down the occasional three here and there, but for the most part, people aren't lining him up to just take 10 threes a game. Jared Vanderbilt would give us another guy like that, but almost supercharged. I mean, if you watch Jared Vanderbilt play, the defensive ground that he covers is incredible. Him next to Anthony Davis would just be a sight to see, and just kind of see the two of them in the help defensive spot and just, cleaning up the lack of perimeter defense, stuff like that. Beasley can defend, Mike Conley can. So this would absolutely be a solid package for the Lakers if they could work that deal out. This, in many people's eyes, is the best trade, or it's up there for one of them. But the other second plan B is the Raptors trade. And personally, this is probably my favorite trade. I really like Jared Vanderbilt. I really like Beasley, and I really like Mike Conley. But if you can get a guy in Gary Trent can do things that those other three guys can't. Score at all three levels, get hot, knock down the three ball. They can all shoot the three ball, but Gary Trent is a guy that can shoot the three ball off the bounce, off the dribble, all of those things. Get a guy in Fred VanVleet who, there is a lot of competition for Fred VanVleet. That's something that we need to keep an eye on. And again, are the Lakers going to give up both firsts for these guys? That's something that may not happen. But could you get a Gary Trent Jr. for one first? Right? That could be something that really works. These two guys would basically round out your starting five beautifully. You have Gary Trent at the one, Fred VanVleet at the one, Gary Trent at the 2, Rui at the 3, LeBron at the 4, Davis at the 5. That allows like Dennis Schroeder to come off the bench. You get the 2 3-and-D style type backcourt players to add next to Anthony Davis. And then you have Rui Hachimura and LeBron James. So you got good size in the front court. All 3 guys with a 7+ foot wingspan. All 3 guys can disrupt passing lanes, things like that. And then you got your 2 defensive guards in the front. That gives you just size switchability. Fred VanVleet, he's obviously a smaller guard, but he's a guy that doesn't need the ball. And something else that I want to point out when it comes to Fred VanVleet, because I've seen a lot of people mention it and say, well, like he only shoots like 40% from the field. Like he's not a great shooter. He shoots, 37, 38% from 3, but he's 40% from the field. Yes, but if you look up his shot charts and you look up his like attempts and stuff, almost all of his shot attempts are 3-pointers. Almost all of them. So that is why his shooting percentage in general is in the lower percentile compared to other guards, because even on the Toronto Raptors, a lot of their offense runs through Pascal Siakam, and Gary Trent, just a lot of his shots come from the 3-point range. So it would be very similar to that type of role for the Lakers. He'd be a guy that could do the point guard duties, but a lot of his shot attempts would come from the 3-point line because you have LeBron James, right? So LeBron's going to kind of be your high usage point guard in many ways. Also, you could run Fred VanVleet because, Darvin Ham loves to play small guards together, but you could run Fred VanVleet next to Dennis Schroeder and still have some shooting, which would be nice because that's kind of an issue that we have right now, right? Like we have a bunch of small guards and none of those guards can really shoot great. Patrick Beverley has picked it up as of late, but still hasn't been great shoot the 3 ball all season for the most part. So get a guy like Gary Trent. If Darvin Ham, which I wouldn't really prefer, but if Darvin Ham did decide to play Dennis Schroeder and Fred VanVleet together in doses, well, then it would be more comparable, right? Because you have Fred VanVleet who can knock it down. I just think that these are 2 young guys that you could have for now in the future. You got your backcourt lined up, ready to go for the next several seasons, even post LeBron. And then you have your front court locked up for the next several seasons, and Rui Hachimura, Anthony Davis, and LeBron James. Even after LeBron leaves, you still have Anthony Davis, Rui Hachimura, Gary Trent Jr., and Fred VanVleet. So then maybe you can move Rui to the 4 at that point, and then maybe you get a guy who could play the 3, maybe in free agency, or you figure out a trade or something, right? That would be the idea. That would be the goal post LeBron, and now you're still good. You're still a contender. Fred VanVleet is still very young, 28. There is concerns about injury history. Gary Trent Jr., he's even younger, 23, 24 years old, and a guy that can come in and really you imagine he's only going to continue to get better. And maybe he becomes the guy that kind of stands out and becomes the starting shooting guard of the future for this team and can really kind of light it up. Plus, the Lakers have almost acquired Gary Trent before, part of a 3-team deal, but that ended up falling through, not because of the Lakers or the Raptors. It was the Knicks side. But when you look at these 2 trades, either of these, in my opinion, are perfect. I'm all for either of them. I do kind of lean towards Fred VanVleet and Gary Trent personally, although I think that the Utah deal gives you a little more depth, right? Because Gary Trent is the best player, in my opinion, the best player out of all of these guys. But could you work out a 2-way? Like, could you get both of those deals independently, right? Could you do a Utah deal and get these 3 guys and then go get a Gary Trent? That could be something. There are reports, and I want to dive into this individually in a later video, but there are reports per Shams that the Utah deal may only require 1 first. So if that is the case, like let's say it's Russell Westbrook 1 first and 2 seconds or 3 seconds, right? And you get Beasley, Conley, and Vanderbilt. Well, could you take Patrick Beverley and Lonnie Walker, package those 2 together, and your other first round pick and go get Gary Trent? Now imagine if your starting 5 was, say, Mike Conley, Gary Trent, Rui Hachimura, LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and then you have a bench of Dennis Schroeder, You have a bench of Dennis Schroeder, Beasley, Austin Reeves. You have Vanderbilt, Gabriel, Troy Brown, Thomas Bryant. Like now you're like legit deep, legit good. You'd have all these guys under control for the next several seasons. So even after this season, you'd still have Mike Conley, Jared Vanderbilt, Malik Beasley, Gary Trent Jr., Max Christie, LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Rui Hachimura. That's pretty good. So you basically have your team for this season and for the foreseeable future. Also, if for whatever reason let's say they don't make let's say it's too late because they do have an uphill climb to battle. So let's say they don't end up making the playoffs or they end up losing in the first round because they're just exhausted by the time they get through the play-in and all that stuff. Good thing is that now you have a full off season, a full training camp, and a full preseason to put it all together and figure it out and work it out to where now you can go compete and contend for the next, at least 2 years while you have LeBron James. And you have basically at least your 8 rotation guys for the future if you could get these 4. Because think about it, like I said, you have LeBron James, Rui Hachimura, Anthony Davis. That's your front court. You could even go Jared Vanderbilt if you want to. And then post LeBron, you could have Rui Hachimura, Jared Vanderbilt, and then Anthony Davis. Like that's pretty good. But like let's say our starting 5 is Rui, LeBron, AD. Well, now if you can get Gary Trent, you have Gary Trent. There's your shooting guard, and then Mike Conley next season, which would be your 5-man rotation. And then at least bare minimum, you would have Max Christie, Malik Beasley, and you'd have Jared Vanderbilt off the bench. And so there's at least 8 guys in your rotation. And then you still have your vet minimums. You still have your taxpayer mid-level. You still have your biannual. So maybe you could keep, Dennis Schroeder as like a backup point guard. Or maybe you obviously Austin Reeves. People would love to see them keep Austin Reeves. It just gives the Lakers a lot of flexibility. And then that's what the Lakers need. The Lakers need depth. They need talent. They need starting level talent, definitely. And they need guys that can be here longer than just one season. Because right now we don't have a ton of cap space. And we're very likely going to have a whole roster turnover again next season. But if you do a deal like the Jazz deal, you can get a Gary Trent, or even if you just get Gary Trent, Fred VanVleet, well, then now you at least have your core players, your starting 5 for the next several seasons. So now it's just let's find the best bench pieces to kind of fit in and now be a contender and compete. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion, so I pass the question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? Which of these deals do you prefer? Do you prefer the Utah deal? Do you prefer the Raptors deal? Would you like a combination of both? Like I said, maybe you could get a Gary Trent and then do the Utah deal. Is that something you'd be interested in? However you feel, whatever your thoughts are, I'd love to hear it. Let me know down in the comments below.